Hello, we are back with Behind the Design. This is week 2, episode 2. I am here with Daniel and Brandon, OPEX coaches. They are going to take you through another client scenario and design today. Daniel is going to take lead. I also wanted to give Daniel a shout out because next week he's going to be speaking live at Coaches Congress in Sweden. So before we dig into today's Behind the Design, I would love, Daniel, for you to just talk a little bit about what you're chatting about with the coaches who are attending live. And if this will be live streamed, please share a link with us.
Yeah, so I'll be speaking about how I ended up in individual design, how I ended up in this, and the principles I've used to build freedom in my profession and in my craft, and kind of take the journey from where I began as being in a gym, working on site, to now being full-time remote coach.
Amazing. Brandon, what's going on in your world this week and next week?
I mean, a lot of stuff is normal. Getting ready for Coach Connect to relaunch that into the new year. Been blessed to be adding some new clients, which has been awesome.
Nice.
Online and in person. So just kind of getting that back into the full schedule, and then just getting training. Just really just focusing on that, getting this January started off right. I feel like nice flow building into, and like a lot of stuff's coming together this month, because obviously this last year has been a lot of like change. So I'm excited to be like in a place for a year and not leave. So, and it feels like it's coming together. So I'm excited for it. So I'm just rolling right now.
Totally. And you're swagged out. Is this new gear or legacy gear?
My girlfriend made this for me for Christmas. It's actually got my back tattoo on the back of the t-shirt.
Whoa.
So cool.
Yeah. And then this was made by a client. So they know what's up. Might have to make some of this myself.
If y'all follow Brandon on IG, make sure you also check out his girlfriend's page. She's super creative, always doing like cool crafts. She made some amazing holiday decor.
Yeah.
So check that out as well. We will jump right in. Just a reminder that the comments are open. We are streaming live primarily here on the OPEX YouTube channel, but we are also on LinkedIn and Facebook Live. So comment below this video wherever you are seeing it, and I will get those comments to the coaches. And with that, I will remove myself from the stream and kick it off to you.
All right, cool.
Beautiful.
We'll discuss this briefly, but I'll go through today. What I want to go through is a client that I recently started up, did the design, and I'll start off by just taking you through the background and the insights I got from the intake, just to give you a little background. And then I'm happy for you to jump in if you have any questions, like on a broad topic or on a specific questions on this client. Does that sound nice?
Talking to me? Yeah. I wasn't sure if that was a group. Yeah, I think just quickly a review too from last week. Last week we dove into the design that I actually created for Daniel, along with Daniel's help. So we went over a couple of those pieces, obviously, in regards to, what Daniel was looking for, how we were looking to kind of progress him long term, and then we went like almost like a play-by-play with each day, just kind of giving a little bit of insight into each one. So going to do the same thing, just led by Daniel. So I'm going to interject where I feel the need to, and then we're gonna just kind of continue there from there. But just a quick like overview, a lot of the topics we discussed from last week, basically diving into that same concept here. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, we'll find some elements that will tie into the last episode as well. But this is a client. He's 47 years old. Training background is quite extensive and done lots of different sports, mixed martial arts, but like the latest part of his fitness career was in CrossFit and Olympic weightlifting. And then obviously having an extensive background, he also has a really he had competed in a different sport, but he was quite competitive in CrossFit a couple of years back. And then now he's at a place where he's not training for competition or that kind of performance anymore, and then transitioning into training for health or training but not competing has been quite of a struggle for him to find that motivation. And sleep and recovery it's good. From time to time, he struggles with sleep and don't get the hours in, but he tries and put effort into like push the quality of sleep. And he's actually OPEX CCP, so he's like with the conversation I had with him, you can notice that he really is conscious about what he needs to do. As you know, with me, you don't always succeed with with all the things that you want to do in terms of lifestyle guidelines. But doing well in nutrition. He had some injuries where the big one is right knee, limiting him from like deep squatting pattern and some jumping, and so that was something that came up. Do have some in the past struggles with shoulders and bicep, but that's not like a big thing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then going into top priorities, he wants to, like, given he's been competitive, kind of left that setting, struggles to find motivation to just train for health and longevity and get like live strong. He wants to find structure and motivation to kind of put find a structure that it's doable for his lifestyle, as well as sometimes he wants to play with fitness, maybe do some CrossFit, maybe do some weightlifting. But the big thing here was find motivation again, as well as find something that suits his lifestyle and where we're at right now, because he can't do like full competitive training.
Cool.
And I usually ask, and it's going to be funny to hear, I usually ask, like, what's a fun training session and what kills your motivation, just to get a picture of like what type of training do you like, and what kind of things do I really need to be careful about when I put in, or how maybe alter the design to make them engageable and fun. And do you ever, like, I know we discussed, but in general, do you investigate what kind of training that the client perceived as just fun and to do?
Maybe not like a direct question like that. That is a good question. I do like that. I do tend to dive into, you know, their experiences in training and what they liked and didn't like. Like a question I always like to ask is, whether they worked with a coach before. If so, what did they like and dislike about that? And then that usually kind of gets into some of the topics of programming. I find that, well, I'll say I've never actually, like I said, I've never directly asked that question, and I probably will start asking that because it does sound good. I do think that's a question that's probably specific to someone who has experience, because I do think a lot of people, general population, you ask that question and they're going to be like, well, I don't like to work out or I don't like to do it like regularly, So I think asking that obviously in the right context would be, with someone like that is perfect, because, when you have enough background, you'll be able to answer that question pretty well, and give good context to the training. But I really, I think that's a great question to ask in general. But
because it's I try at least to get a picture of, because they're going to be faced with, and I have the similar onboarding process that we have an open consultation where we just discuss why we're here, what's the purpose of you reaching out to me, and then from there I do like an intake where they get to answer the question, and a lot of things that usually come up in the intake we already discussed in the more open format in terms of the consultation. And then I usually design the first week and the first block, as well as meet up again and then go through it all. And what I also want to do with that first week, I want to make sure that it looks fun and appealing to him. But that the point you had, if you're not as experienced, you might not be in a place where you can see this is going to be fun, this is not going to be fun, or you evaluate the program in that way. But for him, one thing that stood out when we talked about training And what will be fun is he don't want to be too long of sessions, as well as not too complex. And but it's also needs to have like a clear purpose, and that maybe ties into him being experienced and uh, also kind of have a preference of what's fun and not fun, but also does he buy into the thought that this is going to work, or this resonate with him in terms of what he believes in when it comes to training. So that was a big thing with like coming down later to the decisions in terms of the design.
Yeah, and I think also, one of the things you mentioned, like I'm a big believer too, and no matter who really you're working with, unless they're unless they're in a environment where they have limited time, I really think the first couple weeks is really important to build momentum with them, especially like new people. It is like you said, one of the things I really enjoyed that you said was like not making it so complex. Like you don't want them going in the first day and being like what the hell is this? You know what I mean? Because like that's going to stop them in the workout. And if the first workout that they do, or even say the warm up that they do, takes them 30 minutes, then like you're taking away a valuable time from their training, right? And I think we want to be as efficient as possible and get them in and out in the best way possible if it's not their life. Because I think it might be different in regards to competitive athletes and like professional athletes in that sense, because their life is fitness. But if you don't have that luxury where someone's life is training, then you got to be really efficient and make sure they're not spending an hour and a half, 2 hours in the gym, because they probably only have an hour physically and mentally, and literally and metaphorically, like they only have an hour. And I think that making that first week digestible, making sure that it doesn't change too much, making sure that even if they are experienced too, like someone like that, you don't who's coming off of competing, who's got some injuries, who's got things that are kind of like getting in the way. The last thing you want to do is make them feel that in that first week, right? Give them the opportunity to like feel good, move. I always try to have my first couple sessions in the week with somebody of like a new client be like, oh, well, I could have done more. And it's like, great. Like now we can come back, we can do it again, we can continue, build momentum. Cause that's always the most important thing, especially if someone like this, cause does he have aspirations to like compete in some way again or no?
He wants to. One of his priorities was being ready to do the CrossFit Open, but more in the sense that he wants to still play with fitness and play with the sport of CrossFit. But the overall priority is staying injury free, strength and conditioning, and just building for the long run. But he wants to, from time to time, kind of play with his fitness. So he still want that sport element in his training.
Yeah. So I think
So
that's, like you said, that's crucial. And like making sure that early process, because like obviously the CrossFit Games or the Opens relatively soon, right? It's February.
yeah.
Yeah. So if he's trying to get ready for that, I think you know um, that's obviously getting ready for that in whatever way is right. But I do think early on, like that first week, taking that opportunity to give him confidence in movement is huge.
And back to like the first week, or kind of where we start the design, I think it's easy sometimes to get carried away when you start building a program and building out the design to uh, want to impress with complexity and a lot of
Mhm.
cool progressions, as well as filling out the program too much because you want to showcase your toolbox as a coach. And a good thing is just to leave room to put more in the beginning,
Mhm.
rather than throw too much on the client, maybe end up with it just like for the sake of uh, injury risk. I wanted to get to know my client by increasing as we go, rather than throw a lot of volume on them and then have to back off. Then uh, uh, and the same with complexity. So I don't want to overwhelm them with any of that really in the beginning.
Yeah, and I think even just to add on top of that, again, kind of making that distinction too of like in person and online. When you're online, I just think it's even more important that you have to be cautious and have that stuff almost built in to that first week because you can't see it, right? And you're not there to kind of in real time say, I'm telling them to do this and it looks like this. Because when you're in there in person in real time, it's like, cool, we can make these little adjustments, these little tweaks, and you might be able to, make more progress in a short amount of time. But when you're not with them and you're essentially betting on them to give you the right feedback, make sure they're doing things right, you got to leave room for growth. And like you said, room to add more, because you don't really have one of, if not the most important element, which is like the coach's eye.
100%.
So,
and then I usually ask them about the expectations of me as a coach, and also expectations on the program. And one thing that I found with expectations on me as a coach has been really important for me for the kind of the start of our coach-client relationship, because they will highlight the things that are the most important for them. And one client that maybe have, like him, he wants honest feedback, open dialogue, and he wants to be exposed to new ideas and kind of refine the process together, pretty much like we do.
Mhm.
And I think that comes from him being a coach himself. He kind of wants that educational portion or discussion as a part of the relationship, whereas sometimes you have clients, they just hire a coach because they don't want to care about training. You just want to do what's on today's menu and then don't think about it. So I think it's for me, it's been a help to investigate the expectations on me as a coach, just so I can meet them, but also so I don't create a picture of like, I give you a lot of explanation where you honestly don't care. You just want to do the program. You should connect the client to the purpose, but there's still a kind of varies between clients. Some want more educational portion, some don't. And I just want to make sure that I align with their expectations on me as a coach. And this is also room for me to set the expectations on my clients, just to make sure that we will have a smooth coach-client relationship going forward.
Yeah, and I think also one thing you touched on there that I think is important too is just simply language, because I think sometimes, I think for the most part, when we're discussing this sort of thing with an individual, we're mostly on the same page about what the person wants and how we want to get it to them. And I think sometimes the disconnect comes from like their version in their head of what they hear or the words they use or that sort of thing, and just hearing the client say, because like for the most part, if we break down most things when someone's talking to us, if someone's like, I want to be healthy, I want to move well, they might not have the language that we have, and we just want to express it to them in that way, where it's like, hey, we're on the same page about what we want, you just call it one thing, I call it another thing. Like basic example of that's like toning. People are like, oh, I want to be toned physically. It's like, okay, cool. You want to be leaner. You want to show, you want more muscle mass. You want to look the part more. So, to me early on, that's like one of the most important things. I guess I word it in the way of like, what does success look like for you inside this program? Right. And they'll tell you right away. They're going to tell you for the most part. And obviously the more experienced they are, the better answer you're going to get. But they're usually going to say, it might be, hey, I want to be able to compete in the CrossFit games or the CrossFit Open this year. Right. Or in my case, sometimes it's like, hey, I just want to be able to go to jujitsu twice a week and not move for a couple days after. Or it might just be, I want to literally get back into the gym and lose 10 pounds because I haven't been here in a year. And that's success. And then you build those kind of metrics around it. So you're continuously showing them like, hey, this thing that you talked to me about is there. And sometimes it's even sitting down and actually making that more clear, because a lot of people don't actually have, a direct thing that they want to chase yet. And sometimes it's almost like guiding them and kind of getting them to hit that target. And you just kind of have to a little bit of nudge, like you ask that initial question of like, what does success look like? And you get some either crazy answers or like unrealistic answers. And then you kind of got to be like, well, this is where my experience lies. This is what I've seen, how this, and you kind of hit the head on like, okay, here's our target. Now I have to explain it to them in the right way, make sure that we're on the same page of how we're going to target that or track that.
And it's almost that you're approaching the conversation with the more experienced sometimes they just jump to, I want to achieve this.
Yeah.
And then you have the clients that are maybe less experienced. They might be more broad in the sense, as you explained. But I think there's a job to be done in both cases, where
Mhm.
the one that have more broader kind of purpose and more general in their goal setting, you have to explain to them what this means. Whereas with
Mhm.
the, I think it's easy with the experienced clients that you just buy their list of goals and jump straight into
Yeah.
design,
Yep.
and forget to kind of push back and investigate, why is this important to you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
because if you get to know the reasons behind it, it might be that some of those goals are maybe not as important. But I
Mhm.
think it's useful to look at it as you go from kind of broader vision into more specific goals. More experienced people maybe do that journey by themselves and just deliver you the specific goals, but then it
Yeah.
can be useful to kind of walk backwards and investigate the reasons to that goal setting.
Yeah, especially for someone experienced. I think you hit the nail on the head there. Like, finding out why they want to do half of these things,
Yeah.
because, sometimes they're just either, you know, external reasons, right? Is it an internal reason? Is it an external reason? Are they trying to prove something? Are they, are they putting themselves in a position where they're not going to actually, where it's almost impossible to be successful because of like the
Yeah.
expectation they have and the situation they're in, or whatever it might be. And I think you're right. And I think, in both cases, you have to continue to dig deeper. I think you I think you get a little bit more targeted answers from someone who's experienced, but like you said, you still have to dig deep, and you still have to be like, all right, well, like, I understand where you're at, but how do we actually, like, why do we want this? Dig a little bit deeper, try to figure out, like you said, where it's coming from. And yeah, I mean, you said it really well. So
Yeah, and also maybe sort out, because I believe that performance or competitive athletes are so used to just listing outcome goals. They want to win this or perform here, or perform on this specific date. And maybe in the guidance from going from competitive to more lifestyle client, also maybe guide them more towards habit goals versus outcome goals. So outcome goal would be winning this competition, hit this number. Whereas habit goals are more, we want to implement this, we want you strength training twice a week, whatever the habit is. But also, just because they're used to setting goals in that way, it can be beneficial to play around and investigate, is there any habit goals if we want to transition from competing and performance. Is there any habit goals that might as well kind of uh, do well in terms of the vision, or what you want to create, or what you
yeah,
want to get out of this coach client relationship. So
yeah, I agree.
yeah, so some intake takeaways that ended up in design decisions. I'll jump to his first week in a second, but the one thing that really stood out is that he had a history of maybe doing too much and overreaching, when it comes to um, both training days, intensity, a lot of different aspects of the program. And he answered that he wanted, like, ideally he wanted to train 5 times a week, but more realistically, four times a week would be a better fit. And that's usually back to doing less that maybe you want to do in the future. And also what you said, building that positive vibe. We're successful in the first week. Let's not aim for 5. Let's just go with 4.
Mhm.
And that's usually what I do, is just I go with 4, and then when they start asking for another session, or push themselves for increasing the volume, I maybe save that for the next coaching call, just to
Mhm.
have that discussion, and then we can jump up in the amount of training days. So he'll do 4 days a week, and keep the sessions to maybe 60 to 90 minutes. And I said to him that I really want feedback on how long time this will take you, just to make sure that you don't feel that I have to do all this training, and fine tune. And that's also not being with them on the floor when they're training. That communication is really important for me as a remote coach. So I know about how long it takes this kind of sessions. And I also with him wanted to be time efficient and still having a clear structure. You'll recognize some elements that we've used for my training when it comes to condensed conjugate styles structure. So I think it's a really good way to give structure and give insight, but we don't take up that much space of the program, and we can fit, like, since he still wants to play with the sport of CrossFit, we still can fit those pieces in. Also, we can alter the exercise selections within, so they fit more, or you kind of stay related. It stays relatable to the sport of CrossFit, and he doesn't want too long, complex sessions. So we try to minimize the downtime within the program. So we need to get a lot of work in each piece, and also just making sure to, in the beginning, not design the training so he feels limited by his knee, because that's also just going to be not a fun experience when he starts kind of this first training block. So his first, I designed his first week like this. We have some Swedish in here, which is not going to make much sense, but I'll take you through it. He's also Swedish, so what I usually want to do is, in the beginning of the session, maybe especially if we are a bit limited on time, get some working that's kind of in the middle between a warm-up and like full high intention piece, where you go kind of strength pieces or any CrossFit pieces. I like to have something in the middle, which I sometimes used to call prep, but something between a warm-up and full intensity. And this piece is just to he gets to do some ski erg at easy spin. He do some thoracic flow, as well as some dual hand cluster. And for him in this one, it's just focus on good pop in the hip, prepping for the push press, kind of feeling out everything before we go into the push press, to make sure that when we get to that part of the program, he can basically put that weight on the bar and just go. So he opens with that on the first day, and then we come into, so we have 2 days here, which would be the quite similar to the style that you designed for me, where the push press is a more dynamic movement, and then we follow that with a deadlift. So if you guys watching this wonder about the condensed conjugate, go back to episode 1. Brandon did a great walkthrough through the thoughts behind it and how you can use it. But this is a good example on taking principles and maybe structures and alter them to fit the individual. So he goes with a deadlift as the next exercise. And then what I like to do is take what would be accessory and think about the accessories, how I can put them together in a more kind of CrossFit sport specific setting. So with this, he goes with 40-second hard pace at the bike erg, challenging his lunges. Then he goes to the sandbag hold into a kettlebell swing, and then he rests 2 minutes, and then repeat 4 sets of that. So
for each, with something like this, right? Obviously, with and I think this is another thing that would be good to explain too from your perspective, inside of a CrossFit athlete's week, because I found with CrossFit that it's very similar to MMA, because there's so many different aspects that you want to work on and you have to work on. If you want to be you want to be successful, right? If you want to, it's not just a chest day. It's not just a back day. It's not just, a leg day. It's like, there's aspects that you're working on, whether it be endurance, whether it be speed work, all the things you're kind of seeing here. So when you're looking at the week in regards to someone like this, even implementing something like a condensed conjugate, which kind of brings in some efficiency there, but like, what's your idea on, I'm laying out a week from the beginning into like designing this? Like, what are you looking for? Do you have an idea, obviously, on the pieces that you want to put together in a session? Because obviously the way you kind of laid this out now, there's some pretty specific pairing here, like even on this day one, we have the ski erg, we got that cluster, like you said, worked into the push press, then we have the deadlift, and then we're working on like the lunges and the sandbag hold and the kettlebell swing. So like, I guess, where's your idea on that in regards to blending all this together to create like an entire week for somebody?
I try to, especially with CrossFit athletes, I try to have somewhat of a full body session or like full body split, due to I don't want to just push a lot of volume. If I might have that as maybe a priority or something I want to achieve specifically, but in general, I do more full body sessions just to make sure that I kind of portion out the volume over the session so they're ready to go again. And what I usually do is, if I have a skill, I want to put that on top, usually, because then I want to practice a skill when I'm not fatigued. And then I usually go with strength, and then maybe do some kind of metcon, or kind of blending, using the thought of accessories to do the CrossFit style training. But with that said, I also do have days like this where the first day and the third day are where we do the majority of our strength training, and then we have more conditioning based stuff on the other 2 days. So this will, because I also want to build this for him, because his life varies when he can train. So I don't want it to be that bad if it ends up back to back, or if he needs to push days around. So it should be able to kind of tolerate that, to if he needs to go 3 days back to back, or if he can't manage to stick to the rest days. So yeah.
Cool. And he trains 4 days in a row, or is that just like the way you laid it out? So he trains like Monday through Thursday? Or you have day one, day two. Okay. Yeah, I see. Okay.
He trained 4 days in a row in the beginning, but I'll come to that I probably wouldn't give now, looking back at the first week, because he got really excited and did them all 4 in a row. So I in Coach Eric's, we have the opportunity to, when it comes to client autonomy, give them the access to put the training days or move the training days to where it fit them the coming week. And then what I usually do then, I put all 4 sessions at the end of the week, so they don't get them as missed, and then they can just put them in on maybe on Sunday, just how it's going to work for them in terms of training days. But with him, and learning point for me, because he got really excited and wanted to do all 4 training sessions in a row. And looking back at the first week, I probably would not have done it that way, because then I would have pushed in some rest days in the beginning, just to make sure that he don't go jump too fast on since he had a history of maybe too much intensity or pushing a bit too hard. That would be better for me as a coach to lay it out with specific rest days.
Cool. Yeah.
And then second session, where I used to, given that we need to be time efficient, I wanted to prep the positioning for the power snatch. That's the second part of the session, but I also wanted to take this part to create a reference for the conditioning piece. So the piece is just 5 minutes to find a conversational pace. Note that, because it's going to be the reference for the last piece. And then he had some power snatch, and then he had, and this is a format I really like to use for CrossFit masters athletes, where I believe that you need to be really careful about the volume and the amount of tough contractions they do. So with this one, it's every 5 minutes for 5 sets. We get some CrossFit work in or mixed molar work. And so he's going to do 10 toe to bar, 20 double unders, 300 meter row. He probably can do it unbroken. Then he jumps on the bike. He has the reference from the warm up at conversational pace. And the thought is kind of sustainable work with small doses of five sets of CrossFit or mixed molar work, and then back on the bike.
Mm-hmm.
And the good thing with this is that I get to know he's going to work for 25 minutes, but I also know the amount of tough contractions he's going to do within this workout and kind of fill it out with the bike erg. Because if I just design a 25-minute AMRAP, I might run into a problem where I make a mistake in appreciating how much work he's going to be able to do within those 25 minutes, and then it might end up being way too much. So I think this is a great way, at least for me, and especially I work with a lot of masters athletes, to make sure that I can control the time and the volume within the piece. So
yeah, I was gonna say, I think the way you're describing it too, for any other coach listening, I think one of the most important things in program design is finding structure like this that works, because like I think literally the most important thing you said there is like you can control what he's doing inside of the session without making them feel controlled, right? Like,
yeah.
And I think that's a big thing, because I think a lot of people in his case probably have the ability to do more, right? But giving them the opportunity to have a structure laid out where it's like, hey, you're doing this, this, and this, and then you're just paying attention to how they feel early on in the program, and that gives you a baseline of like knowing where you can come back to, or just basically having like a foundation being built, and having something written out where, because I think sometimes with conditioning pieces, especially what would be the ideal week? Train Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or does not really matter so long as it's not all 4 days in a row? So that was a question, Daniel, if you want to answer, but I'll finish my thought. Can you see that comment or no?
Sorry, go in.
There's a comment at the bottom from Janice.
Oh yeah.
But I'll finish my thought and then I'll have you answer that. So I think having structure like this early on, and getting people used to having guidelines for how you want them to complete things, allows them the ability to kind of keep them in what's the word I'm looking for? Like, keep them reeled in, so they're not going 100 miles an hour, and then you can decide how to add more reps. Because even in a piece like this on the second day, every 5 minutes for 5 sets, they're doing a set amount of work, but they're moving for the entire 25 minutes essentially, because they're going to be on the bike erg after that, and that allows them to still get really good work in. But you can decide like, hey, now I want you to do 12, now I want you to do 15, now I want you to do 30 double unders, now I want you to do 40. And that's a really good way to kind of inch them along so that they're still getting really good work in, but you can know, like you said, the amount of contractions, the amount of actual impact they're taking, and you can kind of find out like, hey, we're hitting a certain point, there's certain movements that just don't work well. So I think it's really important to have that sort of structure in the conditioning especially, but training in general.
Yeah, and also, before answering the question, it's when you get to know the client better, you obviously can guesstimate better how many rounds they're going to get or how it's going to affect them. But in the beginning, I like to control as many variables as possible, just to make sure I stay in control of what the amount of work that's going to be done within this session.
Mm-hmm.
But answering the optimal training days, I'd probably go, if we look at these 4, I'd probably go if we just have the day one as the day one, and then have a rest day, since we have the power snatch, which if we have the heavy deadlift, we have the bending pattern in the power snatch, then I'd go rest day with the power snatch, and then so that would be, so I'd go probably like this. Just to get some room between the power snatch and the deadlift. And then we have kind of a push-pull day here. This is more speed work, so it wouldn't be as affected of the power snatch. And then have this one as the last piece. Or one could do maybe like this. Would also be a good option.
Yeah, I think also it really depends. Like, you obviously know the athlete. I think some people, they just respond different. They might need more rest. They might not. But I think something like this, I think a deadlift is a type of movement where it's like, hey, if you can take a day after, especially before something like a power snatch, as a master's athlete too, I think you have to kind of pay attention to that as well. Like, how fast are they actually recovering from session to session, from set to set?
Yeah.
And then you build in the rest kind of based on that. Because some people, like, for example, if you have a hard session on a Monday and you have another hard session on Wednesday, like it's kind of described out here, you're going to push a little bit more on that deadlift, and knowing I have that next day to kind of recover and get into Wednesday, as opposed to, all right, I have another hard session tomorrow that I have to worry about. You might hold yourself back a little bit. So I think it's really important as well to kind of know that individual when choosing the rest days.
Yeah. And one thing that he mentioned during the consult that I also had a discussion about was that he said that he always struggled with the pulling pattern, especially in gymnastics. And what I might have done before is be like, okay, we're going to fix this. We have one day that it's going to be super focused on the pulling pattern, really making sure that also, given that he said that he wants a clear purpose, seeing that we're taking this into the program. But what I wanted to be careful with, if we go back to a big reason why he came to me, was he lost motivation and he wanted to find joy in training. Giving him a full day where he really got where the theme is him working on his weakness, really highlighting that in the program, might not be as fun. So then it might be better to portion that out during the week. So maybe have the pull-ups here and then doing some rows, and just not doing the holds here, just to not make him, just give him a good feeling during the first week. So we don't have a session full of him just targeting a weakness, because there might come a time and a place where we can do that if he finds a good groove in the training and he's up for kind of focusing on that within a session. But I think sometimes you need to be careful on just jumping to exposing people's weaknesses within the program.
Yeah, and I think you said it best there, because I also think you don't want to just harp on the weakness either, because then it's just, I think too many coaches do that sometimes, where they find a weakness and they, like you said, they almost hyper fixate on trying to fix that thing. And realistically, with a lot of the design, a lot of that fixes itself as you lay it out through the week. And if you do it the right way, obviously you need specific work. You need to kind of like find the way, like you need to do that type of work if he struggles with it. Otherwise, you're not giving him what he's asking for as a coach, right? And doing it the way you did it, or putting it almost like sneaking it in, like, how kids when they're young, they're like, oh, you don't like vegetables, so you like put it in something, you shove it in their mouth. I don't have kids, but maybe that's what you do if you have kids. But you try to trick them into eating something. So I think that's kind of the same idea here. It's like, if he doesn't like it, or he just struggles with it, hide the broccoli. There we go. They struggle with it. It's like fixing it in with other pieces, or knowing like, hey, they hate dumbbell rows, but they love push-ups. So putting some type of work together where it's like, cool, we get to work on 8 to 10 push-ups, and then right after that, we're doing our row to kind of like complement that movement. But yeah, I think you described it well.
And this is also, if we look at, I wanted this to be, so this is the second day where he has the band and box squat for some speed work, and then he's building to a tough set of 5 reps on the dumbbell bench press, followed by some pull-ups, and then the last one, I usually write out complete with quality. So sometimes you need to be careful with the with the CrossFit athletes. If you let's say just write this piece, and then you don't highlight that the importance is quality, because they're used to going for time or intensity or going real fast. So this piece is for quality, but still CrossFit style training. Or at least when he looks at it, he will be familiar with the format. So it's a GHC setup for core, get some extra work for the bicep, continue on the pulling pattern. And then last one is just 2 attempts each round with a free handstand hold, playing around with skill. I said I usually go with skills in the beginning if they are a priority and I want to practice them. But this is more having two pieces really connected to the strength goal for that day, but also getting him to do some handstand hold or playing around with a skill that's more relatable to his sport. And then last day is conditioning heavy. Finish off the day where he gets to do some sets with different movements and machines. Just thought is to start building capacity, kind of dragging this out, but still sustainable work with the rest, like tough work, but still not sustainable in the sense that within the set. But I want him to repeat the scores each set. So this is kind of his week, and if what I usually want to do is, for all pieces, when I write my design, make sure that I can define for myself how I'm going to build on this and what's the progression. Like, first off, with what's the intent and what we discussed now, why is it in the program? And then also, how am I going to build on this, as well as how am I going to make sure or evaluate or assess that we're moving in the right direction. So I try to go through that when I do all my design. And with this, if we look at, just take few examples, where if we have the push press, we had the interval of 50 to 60%. Now I just want him to settle at 60%. With the deadlift, we're moving in from this was kind of a startup week, but I want to see, because we're going to build a progression on this one. I want him to do a triple. And then with this one, we added some 10 seconds on the bike, kept the lunges, we added 10 seconds on the hold, and then we changed the kettlebell swings to hang power snatch with the dumbbells. So he's going to be working for a bit longer time and building on this piece. It's still some variance, because I know that coming from a CrossFit background, usually you want some variance, but still it's going to be trackable that he makes progress, and we're building on the previous week. Mm-hmm. And then if we look at with this one, if we take this piece, we have the total bar double under row. Now we are putting some demand on the toaster bar and double unders with 7 push-ups. 7 push-ups is not going to be that tough for him, but it's still going to mess a bit with the toaster bar and double unders, making sure that we progressed in this one in terms of how much work we do with the tough contractions. And it's not a big change, but given that he reflects and he wants a clear purpose, and we can have the discussion on, it's a slight change, this is why we're doing it. And so he also can follow the progression. And what I usually, and that goes back to especially working with people that come from CrossFit, they are so used to constantly changing program variants. And what I usually ask them is, like, if you need more variants, tell me, else I'm going to build it quite with a clear structure over 3 weeks, and then might do a deload or pullback week, or might pull it out to a 4 or 6 weeks. But if you need more variants, you need to tell me. Otherwise, I'm going to lean in the beginning more towards structure, where I can really see and follow the amount of work we do, just to educate myself where we sit in terms of your tolerance and how this works for you. Because if I just throw them into completely random program, like the first week, I don't know really how I assess that and what to learn from it if I'm not going to build on it and like place it in a bigger structure.
Yeah. I think that's, you know, I think that's one of the biggest things with CrossFit I saw when I was heavier into it was just the need for variation, and almost to a fault, you know, because like we've talked about in the past with programming, there has to be some consistency to it. And I
Yeah.
think whether it's, you know, the movements, whether it's the structure, like there has to be some consistency, especially if you're training for something with a, or trying to find that purpose. Cause I think part of the losing purpose in training is when you're just kind of doing whatever whenever because you feel like you need variation. And I think it's the same thing with most things in fitness. When people feel like they need to change things or they get bored easily, quote unquote, then that's when things start to falter. Because if you know something works and it's going to get you results and you just stick with it for a little bit, you know, um, then it works, you know. And I think when you try to go and change things just for the sake of changing things, that's when you kind of lose track and end up either missing the mark on whatever it was you're trying to hit, or you just end up confusing yourself and just, you know, basically falling off the path.
Yeah, and when I find myself, I usually think about it as when I find myself entertaining with either variance or complexity. Does this mean that I not have had the conversation I need to have with my clients? Do I
Mhm.
need to reconnect to the purpose? Do I need to um, educate them more on why we do things? Because there's definitely a place for variance as keep making the program engageable, fun, and if that what makes you kind of do fitness, that's a good argument.
Mhm.
But still, I think a lot of that can be overcome by discussing the purpose and why we do things and connected to the bigger picture. And I know in my design we discussed, or I reached out to you that with the accessories, if we could, let's say if we look at a 6-week period,
Mhm.
maybe halfway change them up, because it's, to me, I try to put a lot of intention and go really all in with my training and building over a long time. To me, I after maybe 3 or 4 weeks uh, get a bit mental fatigue and a
Yeah.
problem with pushing intensity, and then sometimes it's nice to mix it up. But that's like you said, if you just put variance in for variance sake, then sometimes it's a conversation you're not having with your clients in terms of purpose and reconnecting it to why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah, and as a coach, I think it's just really important to understand what you're trying to get out of a session too, like because that makes things a lot easier for variation. And I think again, I'm not saying that variation is bad. I mentioned that I would rather see you have a purpose with the variation than just changing. But for example, like when me and Daniel talked about his accessory work, you know, one of my goals on that accessory piece that we were specifically talking about was just to work on like a single leg pattern, whether it be a hinge or a squat, and just to complement the deadlift. And that's my main stimulus with that piece. So, and there's a lot of different variations I can go from that. As long as I'm getting the stimulus that I'm trying to achieve in that session, then we're good. You know, so it doesn't really matter so much about how you create variation, but the stimulus has to stay the same, right? We can't go from
Yeah.
one week saying I'm going to work on a lunge and then the next week we're going to do a push press in that same, like, it just doesn't make any sense, right? So as long as you have that stimulus of in the accessory piece, I'm trying to work on X, then next week that stimulus stays the same, but we're doing a step up instead of a reverse lunge, or, you know, some type of hinge movement instead of either of those. Like as long as you're hitting that piece or that main idea or stimulus, then variation can occur in so many ways. So that's the important part.
Yeah, and also I think it's, from a coaching perspective, variance can be quite comfortable in the sense that, like I said, it's hard to assess whether this is working.
Mhm.
And sometimes for a coach, it can be quite comfortable with high variation because then you can't be assessed
Yeah.
for what you're doing.
Yep.
And that might, short term or on a lower level, feel like a positive thing, or you lean into that because it's comfortable, but then you're missing out on the really, really nice top kind of experience with your clients where you're super clear about the purpose, you adjust accordingly, and then you achieve it together through that process. And you actually can look back and see, like, we did this, we progressed this way, and we achieved this. So being brave enough to not also, as a coach, hide behind variation, I think is a good thing. Because
I mean, yeah, I agree. I totally agree. I think that's like probably one of the more important points to think too, because I do think sometimes variation has become such a big piece because it almost like clouds that aspect of it. It's like, oh, well, we're doing something different every week, so that's variation. You got to confuse the body, whatever, we get told. But and oftentimes it's almost a way to cover yourself of actually showing progress.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, at least I try to not hide behind variation. I try not to entertain with variation and complexity, because if I find myself that I do, I try to revisit, is there a conversation I need to have with my clients? Am I doing a good enough job as a coach to explain and connect them to the purpose and why behind we're doing what we're doing? And if I've done all that and we still land in that we need some more variation because it's fun, it's fine. Then let's change things up.
Yeah, I just think, like you said, principles matter here, like especially in that, where it's like, as long as you know the stimulus, you know the outcome you want to achieve, then however you can achieve that, put it in.
Yeah. So this was the first week. We didn't end up, as I said, with how it played out. As you know, that's never how you want it to, or usually you need to make adjustment. Because he did all 4 days in a row and ran into, maybe it wasn't a big deal. It was just that he needed to pull back, but he could feel his he got some aches here and there, telling me that maybe we went out a bit too hot in terms of him just going 4 sessions in a row. So what I needed to do, if you like keep in mind the progression that we had in the beginning, I swapped the barbell hip thrust just for this week, just to make sure to take some load off the spine, giving him a good start in the beginning, and keeping this. I changed this to, and I pulled out the hold also just to save him some tension on the spine, get him a chance to recover, and then we're still within this week. But so learning points for me as a coach. In this case, I would probably design it in another way. I would have given him rest days, and yeah, you learn.
That's why we do it.
Yeah,
but it looks good. Yeah, I like the layout. I like the kind of explanation, diving deep into all of it. It makes a lot of sense. So
let's see if I'm back. Yeah, so that was my my client for today.
Beautiful.
Do you have any questions?
58 minutes. Yeah, I don't know if there was any questions. I know there's one from Janice. Saw a couple comments here and there, but anything that
you guys are just getting some love. So
Beautiful.
I guess my question is, the feedback so far outside of the tweaks that you had to made from the minor aches and pains, motivation is there, like intensity is now where it needs to be with those breaks. What are you guys focused on in this next week?
So yeah, so this week we kind of focus on just making sure that he needs to recover, and yeah, making sure that he finds a good groove. We don't want to push it too hard, and fine tuning. So we make sure to find the right volume, that not push him too much going forward.
Cool.
Awesome. That was a lot of fun. Thanks so much for letting us get a peek behind the scenes, Daniel. And I loved just like it's so interesting to see the different perspectives on the intake side, and the way that each of you guys pull out the insights that you need to design better and connect deeper with the clients. One thing that did pop up to me, I know that you mentioned in the intake that there was kind of high life stress and inconsistent sleep. Anything worth noting in like the lifestyle dashboard?
Yes, but since I do believe that we look at trends and not like specific numbers, I want to give it a couple of weeks before, so I can create a good picture rather than jumping in on like specific numbers. Because then, obviously, he expressed that sleep can be an issue for him. So I'm keeping an eye on that. And he synced his watch as well as tracking his food. So it's I definitely something that we would bring up on the first consult. But what I usually do is get the training going, keeping an eye out, and keeping a conversation about the lifestyle factors, and then we can on the first consultation after 4 weeks make sure that we dial that in as well.
I know that on the client autonomy side, exercise swapping and adjustments are on the way. This is probably, since he's a more experienced client and a coach himself, one that you could enable those features for. Are you still in that early assessment process to decide if that's something you want to do to let him move around workouts as he's feeling better, or swap things out?
Yeah, I gave him the option to move his workouts around, and given that my learning point from this was probably if I go back to the intake again, him having a tendency to maybe go a bit too hard, pushing intensity too much, I'll probably be a bit careful to give him too much of autonomy in the beginning, and make sure just so he goes through me and we can have that conversation together, learning from this first week with him. So definitely something that I would use for more experienced clients, but especially for the ones that I've had for years and years, because we have such a good coach-client relationship, and it's gone more from me informing them about what to do to discussion and them being able to make their own decisions. And that's usually how I want it. I want to create autonomy and empower them to kind of do their own decisions within fitness and when it comes to the design. So I'd say maybe not super clear on just because they're experienced, but if they might be a new client, I still maybe need to keep that for myself. So I make sure that discussion goes through me. But then if I look at the ones that I've had for years, that's a super useful tool.
Amazing. Well, that brings us just a little over the hour. I don't want to steal too much of your guys' time, but I appreciate you. We will be back next week. I'm assuming, Brandon, you're showcasing a client. You have any sneak peeks of what to expect next week?
Not yet.
Or not yet. Not yet. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us live. Again, if you have questions, feel free to comment on this video below, and we'll always creep on the questions before we pop in live next week. And we'll be back. Any last words before we close out?
No, I don't think so. Next week's just going to be sick. Just know that.
Happy coaching, guys. We'll see you next Tuesday.
See ya.
Yeah.